end to crippling tariffs imposed on the Australian wine industry may be in sight, with reports the Chinese government is willing to broker a deal. The news has been welcomed by industry leaders, but they say it's not over the line yet.
South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas meeting with the state's largest trading partner. This week he led the largest delegation of industry leaders to mainland China since the pandemic. Top of the agenda were tariffs on SA's $800 million wine industry.
Our meetings were productive, they were respectful, and it gave a great opportunity to again share the South Australian wine story, the quality of the wines that we produce, the diversity of the wine styles.
Beijing imposed sanctions on Aussie wine exports in November 2021, forcing those in the industry to quickly pivot and look for new international markets to sell their wine. But now, after months of negotiations between the two countries, a glimmer of hope. Reports China is willing to broker a deal with Australia, ending the almost 200% tariff on wine. However, industry leaders aren't popping the cork just yet.
And whilst this sign is incredibly important that's come out in the last 48 hours, it is another small step on that road to resolution. And so it's warmly welcomed, but there's still a lot of work to do.
It's been 8 weeks since Australian barley exporters were given the good news Beijing had dropped sanctions on grain. Since then, grape growers have hoped their industry would be next. This latest indication, a sign Aussie wine may soon be flowing again to China.
We welcome the news. There is a long way to go, but there are positive steps forward.
If the federal government can negotiate a successful deal for the wine industry, it would see the live lobster trade as the last remaining sector still affected by large Chinese tariffs, an industry worth $700 million.
Premium Australian and particularly South Australian food and beverage products are still incredibly in high demand from Chinese consumers.
Josh Webster for 10 News First.
Foreign Minister Penny Wong has been measured but firm in her second address to the UN General Assembly. She highlighted the threat climate change poses for the region and the work being done to help Pacific nations facing the very real possibility of being flooded out of existence. She also issued a stark warning to member states over Russia's invasion of Ukraine, echoing the concerns of almost every other speaker.
If we waver in our response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we would be validating the most fundamental of breaches of international law, who might be the next victim of state-based aggression.
Minister Wong also challenged the United Nations to reform itself to better respond to an age of existential threats. Ukraine has taken its fight against Russia to the invaders' Black Sea Fleet headquarters, blowing it up with a precision missile strike. Much of the building was destroyed by missiles given to Ukraine by the UK and France. Ukraine's President Zelensky celebrated the hit while meeting Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Ottawa. Comedian Russell Brand has spoken out following a week of allegations by several women accusing him of sexual assaults and rape. In a video published on social media, he thanked followers for their support and accused the media of corruption and censorship.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Obviously it's been an extraordinary and distressing week, and I thank you very much for your support and for questioning the information that you've been presented with.
He didn't address the allegations directly, but made more claims about what he described as deep state and corporate collusion stifling freedom of speech. A US senator and his wife have been indicted for accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes in envelopes full of cash and gold bars. The New Jersey Democrat, Robert Menendez, is accused of accepting the money from a group of local businessmen in return for using his senior position on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to aid the Egyptian government. Both Menendez and his wife deny the charges. America's automotive workers' strikes escalating for some companies, with new walkouts ordered at dozens more factories across the country. 38 sites owned by General Motors and Stellantis will now be hit by strikes as talks over pay and benefits stall. But actions at Ford plants have been scaled back, with union leaders saying negotiations are progressing well. Millions living along America's east coast are bracing for a very windy and wet weekend. Tropical storm Ophelia is rearing up out of the Atlantic and heading for land.
You know, we're right at the peak of hurricane season. We can basically have storms form anywhere across much of the Atlantic basin this time this year, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Western Atlantic, all the way out across the tropical Atlantic and even up into the subtropics. So just about, you can have formation just about any time, anywhere this time of year.
North Carolina will cop the first hit in just a few hours, with Ophelia then predicted to track up the coast, potentially as far north as New York. Workmen installing a new gas network in Peru's capital have discovered a pre-Inca cemetery. These small bundles are actually the remains of several ancient men. They were wrapped in cotton and tied with rope before being buried more than 1,000 years ago. Public works in Lima are often interrupted by archaeological finds. The gas company alone has unearthed almost 2,000 sites in 19 years. After days of pageantry and politics in Paris, it was all about the plonk on King Charles's last day in France as he indulged in two of his great passions at a Bordeaux vineyard. The royal couple was given an exclusive tour of Chateau Smith Haute Lafitte, a vineyard known for its sustainable approach to winemaking. After a good stomp around the vines at a rather unsuccessful attempt at feeding the resident llama, Charles and Camilla got to sample the local drop. The couple was then sent on their way with a rousing rendition of the French national anthem and probably a few extra cases of Bordeaux's best in the hold.